The nebula existed beyond the boundaries of civilized space, a churning maelstrom of cosmic energy that radiated chaos in its purest form. Scientists had 1,000 names for it. The Maelstrom Nebulae, the Chaos Veil, the Madness, but all agreed on one simple truth: nothing that ventured into those swirling cosmic storms ever returned intact. Within this cosmic tumult dwelled entities that defied conventional understanding. The Cthar, as they have been named in whispered legends, were beings of pure energy and consciousness, formless and eternal. They existed beyond the constraints of physical matter, capable of manipulating local space-time at will, generating reality-altering hallucinations, and communicating through the direct transmission of raw, primal emotions so intense they could drive ordinary species to madness. For centuries, the advanced civilizations of the galaxy had attempted to study them. The logical Vulnarians had sent unmanned probes equipped with the most sophisticated sensors, only to receive scrambled data and inexplicable energy readings before losing contact. The disciplined Cylons had dispatched their finest scientific minds on heavily shielded research vessels, believing their evolved mental conditioning would protect them from whatever lurked within Nebula. Their ships were found drifting at the nebula's edge months later, the crew reduced to babbling shells, their minds shattered beyond repair. Even the warlike Draconids, with their heavily armored dreadnoughts and brutal determination, had attempted to capture a Cthar specimen by force. Their flagship was later discovered torn apart from the inside out, twisted metal frozen in impossible configurations, as though space itself had rebelled against the very materials that composed the vessel. The galaxy reached a consensus. The Cthar were a chaotic force of nature, unknowable and untamable. The only rational response was to maintain distance and establish warning beacons around the nebula's perimeter. At the very edge of this chaotic region sat a small observation station, a metal bubble clinging to a barren asteroid. Inside, Dr. Eris Thorne conducted what he considered to be the only sensible approach to studying the Cthar, from as far away as possible while still collecting meaningful data. The aging Xylosian xenobiologist had spent decades monitoring the nebula, recording failed expeditions, and cataloging the myriad ways intelligent life could be destroyed by forces beyond comprehension. Another day, another fool's errand, Thorne muttered to himself as he adjusted the long-range sensors. His crystalline exoskeleton, once vibrant and iridescent in his youth, had dulled to a matte blue-gray with age. 6 articulated limbs moved with practiced efficiency across his instrument panel. The station's AI chimed. Incoming transmission from Central Science Authority, Priority Omega. Thorne sighed. Priority Omega typically meant yet another species had decided they were exceptional enough to challenge the nebula's secrets. Display. The holographic screen flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of Science Commander Vex, a high-ranking official in the Galactic Concordat. Dr. Thorne, Vex intoned without preamble, mandibles clicking in agitation. Our deep space sensors have detected an unauthorized vessel approaching the Maelstrom Nebulae. Intelligence suggests it may be of human origin. Thorne's compound eyes widened slightly. Humans? What would they possibly hope to accomplish? They're barely space-capable by galactic standards. Unknown, but their trajectory indicates a direct approach vector. We're transmitting coordinates. Monitor and record. Do not intervene. As if I would, Thorne replied dryly, but the transmission had already ended. Humans. The newest members of the galactic community were still regarded as unpredictable curiosities by most established species. Emotional, short-lived, and possessed of what many considered a dangerous combination of technological capability and poor judgment. Their homeworld had only achieved faster-than-light travel a mere century ago, and already they were pushing boundaries that sensible species knew to respect. Thorne adjusted his instruments, focusing on the indicated coordinates. Sure enough, a small vessel was approaching the nebula's outer boundary. Its design was unmistakably human, asymmetrical, retrofitted, and lacking the elegant efficiency of more advanced species crafts. Computer, identify that vessel. After a moment of processing, the AI responded. Vessel identified as the Vagabond, Earth-registered salvage and rescue craft. Class D, independent operator. Known modifications exceed standard specifications by approximately 67%. Thorne settled in to observe what would certainly be another tragedy to add to his extensive catalog. If he were capable of human emotions, he might have felt pity. The Vagabond was a patchwork beauty, Frankenstein's monster of salvage parts and custom modifications. The original frame, a standard Horizon-class rescue vessel, was barely recognizable beneath layers of retrofitted armor plating, auxiliary power systems, and non-standard sensor arrays. Despite its ungainly appearance, the ship moved with surprising grace through the starfield, approaching the nebula's swirling edge with deliberate speed. On the bridge, Captain Jax Reed slouched in the worn command chair, one leg draped casually over its arm. At 43, Jax had the weathered appearance of someone who'd spent too many years exposed to too many different planetary atmospheres. Deep laugh lines framed eyes that had seen everything from spectacular cosmic wonders to the darkest corners of human suffering. A perpetual 5 o'clock shadow covered a jaw that could be called stubborn by friends or obstinate by enemies. "How's our approach looking, Kalen?" Jax asked, tossing a small rubber ball against the view screen and catching it with practiced ease. Kalen bright hunched over the navigation console, fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with manic energy. The engineer's shock of white hair stood in stark contrast to dark skin the color of burnished mahogany. At 29, Kalen was a certified genius who could have commanded a prestigious position on any research vessel or corporate starship. Instead, they chose the freedom of a salvage crew and the opportunity to modify systems without oversight or regulation. "We're about 30 minutes from the nebula's outer boundary," Kalen replied, without looking up. "Gravitational fluctuations are stronger than the charts indicated. I'm compensating with the lateral thrusters." A lopsided grin spread across their face. "Did you know that conventional physics starts breaking down about 15 kilometers into the nebula? The mathematical possibilities are absolutely fascinating." From the communications station, Dr. Lena Petrova raised an eyebrow. "Fascinating isn't the word most people would use when describing a region of space known for driving people insane, Kalen." Lena was the ship's linguistic and psychological specialist, a former academic who had left the sterile halls of Earth's prestigious universities for the visceral reality of first contact scenarios. Her expertise in xenolinguistics had proven invaluable on countless missions, helping the crew navigate complex interactions with new species and cultures. "Most people aren't me," Kalen replied with a shrug. "Besides, the data from previous expeditions is incomplete. Everyone panics too quickly." From the security station, a deep voice rumbled. "Everyone has their breaking point." Marcus Grunt. Washington stood like a sentinel beside the weapons console, arms crossed over a barrel chest. The former Earth Defense Force Marine had seen more combat than the rest of the crew combined, yet rarely spoke of his experiences. His dark eyes constantly scanned readouts and view screens, ever vigilant for threats. The nickname Grunt had originally been pejorative, assigned by officers who mistook his economy of words for lack of intelligence. He had embraced it, finding an odd comfort in being underestimated. Jax caught the rubber ball one final time and tucked it into a pocket. "All right, people, let's review the plan. We're after the wreckage of the Stellar Horizon. Their last transmission reported discovering a rich deposit of quantum crystals before communications failed. Concordat regulations prohibit salvage operations in the nebula, but they don't have jurisdiction over independent operators like us. They prohibit it because it's suicidal," Lena pointed out. "They prohibit it because they want to keep the good stuff for themselves," Jax countered with a roguish grin. "Besides, we're not going deep. Quick in, quick out. 30 minutes tops." The Stellar Horizon had the same plan, Grunt observed quietly. "The Stellar Horizon didn't have Kalen's modifications to the shields," Jax replied, "or Lena's psychic dampeners." Lena frowned. My dampeners are experimental at best, Jax. They might help with the emotional projections that Kthara allegedly emit, but there's no guarantee. That's why I said quick in, quick out, Jax said, standing up and stretching. We need the score, folks. The Vagabond's fusion core is running on borrowed time, and replacement parts don't come cheap. One load of quantum crystals could set us up for years. As the crew continued preparations, none of them noticed the subtle shift in the nebula's swirling patterns, as though something within had taken notice of their approach. The first warning came 30 seconds after they crossed the nebula's outer boundary. The shields, designed to filter out harmful radiation and deflect micrometeorites, began to emit a high-pitched whine. "That's not supposed to happen," Kalen muttered, fingers flying across control panels. "The energy patterns out. You're like nothing in our database. It's as if the very fabric of space is folding in on itself." "Folding how exactly?" Jax demanded. Before Kalen could answer, the Vagabond shuddered violently. Emergency lights flashed as the main power fluctuated. "Something's interfering with the core containment field," Kalen said, voice rising in pitch. "I need to get to engineering." As Kalen rushed from the bridge, Lena's console erupted in a cascade of alerts. "I'm picking up something. Not quite electromagnetic, not quite gravitational. It's as if—" Her words cut off as the ship lurched again, more violently this time. Grunt was thrown against a bulkhead, but regained his footing with practiced ease. Jax clung to the command chair as artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. "Status report," he shouted over the cacophony of alarms. "Main propulsion offline. The ship's AI reported with clinical detachment. Auxiliary power at 63% and declining. Communications array compromised. Hull integrity at 92%. "Get us out of here," Jax ordered, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew it was too late. Through the view screen, the swirling colors of the nebula intensified, patterns shifting in ways that seemed intentional rather than random. A tendril of purple-black energy extended toward the ship, moving with deliberate purpose. "Brace for impact," Grunt called out, but there was no physical collision. Instead, as the energy touched the hull, every screen on the bridge filled with impossible fractals that shifted and transformed, bypassing safety protocols and security measures as if they didn't exist. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The alarms silenced. The emergency lights stabilized. The ship drifted, seemingly untouched, deeper into the nebula. In the unnatural silence that followed, Jax tapped his communicator. "Kalen, what's our status?" Static answered him for several seconds before Kalen's voice broke through, strained and distant. "You're not going to believe this, Jax. The main engine is completely offline, but there's something else. Something inside the ship's systems. I can't explain it, but it feels aware." "Aware? What do you mean aware?" "I mean, it's watching me through the diagnostic sensors. The readouts keep changing to show me what I'm looking for before I even input the commands." From the science station, Lena spoke in a hushed tone. "Jax, we're not alone." The captain turned to find Lena staring transfixed at her console. "What are you seeing?" "Patterns. Complex, evolving patterns. They're responding to my thoughts. When I think of a question, the pattern shifts to, it's trying to communicate." "Step away from the console," Grunt advised, drawing his sidearm. "Could be some kind of hallucination technique." "No," Lena insisted. "It's more than that. It's—" The bridge plunged into darkness. For 3 heartbeats, not even the emergency lights functioned. When illumination returned, the view screens showed only static and a strange, shimmering distortion hovered in the center of the bridge. The distortion had no fixed shape, shifting between states of matter like a liquid becoming gas, becoming something else entirely. Colors that shouldn't exist in normal space-time rippled across its surface. It expanded and contracted in a rhythm reminiscent of breathing. "Nobody move," Jax whispered, slowly reaching for the emergency beacon on his belt. The distortion pulsed once, and everyone on the bridge simultaneously experienced a wave of pure, undiluted terror. Not their own fear, but something alien, the existential dread of a being that experienced reality in ways incomprehensible to human consciousness. Grunt dropped to one knee, face contorted in pain. Lena gasped, hands clutching the sides of her head. Jax felt his heart racing, sweat beading on his forehead as his mind struggled to process the alien emotion. And then, inexplicably, Kalen's voice came over the comm system, sounding strangely animated. Is anyone else seeing this? The quantum field equations are solving themselves in midair. This is incredible. The distortion pulsed again, this time projecting confusion rather than fear. Lena, despite the pain, focused her trained mind on the sensation. It's curious. It doesn't understand why we're still coherent. Coherent is a generous description of my current state, Jax managed through gritted teeth. His hand, still inching toward the emergency beacon, froze as the corridor outside the bridge began to twist and warp, angles bending in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. The bulkhead beside Grunt stretched and contracted, the solid metal flowing like taffy. The seasoned Marine watched with narrowed eyes but didn't flinch, his expression one of stoic acceptance rather than terror. The distortion pulsed a third time, projecting a chaotic mixture of emotions: curiosity, confusion, frustration, and something akin to childish petulance. It's testing us, Lena realized aloud. Previous encounters, it expected us to break, to go mad or flee. Jax, fighting through the disorientation, made a decision that would later be described by Dr. Thorne's report as characteristic human irrationality at its most inexplicable. He straightened up, faced the shimmering entity, and grinned. Well, if we're going to have company, he said, tapping a command into his chair's console, we might as well make it a party. The ship's speakers crackled to life, and the opening chords of an ancient Earth rock song thundered through the bridge. AC/DC's Back in Black blasted at near painful volume, the driving rhythm and screaming guitars creating an auditory assault that seemed ludicrously out of place given their circumstances. The Kthar entity pulsed rapidly, its form contracting and expanding in apparent agitation or surprise. The projected emotions became a jumbled mess, confusion predominant among them. On the engineering deck, Kalen had progressed from fascination to active engagement. Instead of fleeing the quantum anomalies manifesting around the engine core, they had begun measuring them, calling out observations to the ship's recording systems. The space-time distortions are following a non-random pattern. There's intelligence behind the chaos. Kalen shouted over the music echoing through the ship. If I can identify the underlying mathematical principles, maybe I can communicate back. Using a handheld scanner, Kalen projected a simple interference pattern into one of the spatial distortions. To their delight, the distortion shifted, replicating the pattern before transforming it into something more complex. It's like a game, Kalen laughed, the sound bordering on manic. A cosmic game of pattern recognition. On the bridge, Lena had recovered enough to activate her experimental psychic dampeners. Instead of trying to block the alien emotions entirely, a task she now realized was impossible, she recalibrated the devices to organize and filter the impressions. The Kthar doesn't just project emotions, she announced, eyes wide with realization. It's a form of language. Raw, primal, but with structure. She closed her eyes, concentrating, and then purposefully projected a powerful emotion of her own. Not fear or anger, but curiosity. Scientific fascination. The desire to understand. The entity's pulsations slowed, steadied. The projected emotions shifted, becoming less chaotic, more focused. Grunt, meanwhile, remained motionless, his breathing deep and measured. The hallucinations that had begun to form around him, scenes from battles long past, fallen comrades reaching out with accusatory stares, simply washed over him without effect. The Kthar directed a particularly intense, emotional assault at him. But the Marine's mind, tempered by trauma and rigorous psychological conditioning, accepted the visions without resistance. He did not fight them, nor did he succumb to them. He simply acknowledged their presence and continued his vigilant watch over the bridge. This seeming immunity appeared to intrigue the entity further. It concentrated its presence near Grunt, generating increasingly elaborate visions. In response, the Marine simply nodded to the apparitions, as though greeting old friends. "I've seen worse," he stated simply. Throughout the ship, reality continued to warp and shift. Corridors extended impossibly. Rooms rearranged themselves. The laws of physics bent and flexed. Yet instead of descending into panic or madness, the human crew responded with adaptations that bordered on the absurd. Jax increased the music's volume, singing along off-key while performing calculations to determine their position in the nebula. Kalen engaged in what could only be described as a mathematical conversation with spatial anomalies. Lena began cataloging the emotional projections like entries in a xenolinguistic dictionary. And Grunt stood firm, a psychological anchor in a sea of chaos. From his observation station, Dr. Aristhorn watched with growing disbelief as his sensors captured fragments of these interactions. The human vessel should have been destroyed by now, or at minimum, its crew reduced to catatonic shells. Instead, his instruments detected continuing power signatures, sporadic communications, and inexplicable energy patterns that suggested the Kthar entity was not attacking so much as engaging. "Impossible," he whispered to his empty station. "Statistically impossible." Yet the evidence continued to accumulate before his eyes, defying all established understanding of Kthar behavior. Hours passed in the nebula's shifting embrace. On the Vagabond, a strange equilibrium gradually established itself. The Kthar entity's manifestations became less erratic, more purposeful. The spatial distortions stabilized into navigable patterns. The emotional projections, while still alien and intense, took on recognizable rhythms that Lena began to interpret with increasing accuracy. "It's like they've never encountered minds like ours," she explained to Jax as they huddled in what had once been the mess hall, but now resembled a Mobius strip of metal and light. The Kthar exists in a state of perpetual chaos. Previous species they encountered tried to impose order or fled from the disorder. We're adapting to it, incorporating it. So we're too crazy to drive crazy, Jax summarized with a lopsided grin. Sound about right. In engineering, Kalen had made a breakthrough of a different sort. The entity's manipulation of space-time had actually revealed a solution to their damaged engine core. "It's showing me how to reconfigure the containment field," Kalen exclaimed, watching as impossible equations wrote themselves in glowing light above the damaged components. "The mathematics is beyond anything we've developed, but the principles, I can work with this." Grunt had taken to carrying on one-sided conversations with the various apparitions that followed him through the ship. Not because he believed they were real, but because acknowledging them seemed to satisfy the entity's curiosity. "That's not how it happened at Ceres Station," he told a particularly gruesome vision of a fallen comrade. "You died quickly. No pain." The apparition shifted, the horror of its appearance mellowing into a more peaceful visage. The Kthar entity, for its part, seemed to be learning. Its manifestations became more coherent, its emotional projections more nuanced. It began to mimic aspects of human communication, not with words, but with impressions that conveyed increasingly complex concepts. Lena established a rudimentary form of dialogue, projecting carefully structured emotional sequences and interpreting the responses. "It doesn't think like we do," she reported. "It doesn't think at all in any way we'd recognize. But it perceives. It adapts. And right now it's fascinated. Fascinating to a chaos entity," Jax mused. "Should I be flattered or terrified?" "Both," Lena replied with a small smile. "Definitely both." A pivotal moment occurred on the third day. Kalen, working tirelessly to implement the alien mathematical principles into the ship's systems, hit an impasse with the quantum alignment of the drive core. The entity, seemingly sensing the frustration, manifested directly within the engineering bay, not as a chaotic distortion, but as a concentrated field of energy that delicately manipulated the damaged components. Space curved precisely around the damaged sections, creating a pocket of altered physics where the broken pieces functioned as though they were whole. It wasn't a repair in any conventional sense, more like a localized rewriting of reality where the concept of broken temporarily ceased to exist. Kalen watched in awe as the impossible unfolded before them. "It's helping us," they whispered. "It actually wants us to succeed." Meanwhile, Lena had been sharing human cultural experiences through emotional impressions. The wonder of viewing Earth from orbit for the first time, the complex mixture of joy and sorrow at the birth of a child, the transcendent experience of music. The entity absorbed these impressions and reflected them back, transformed but recognizable. During one such exchange, Lena shared the profound sense of connection humans feel during moments of deep understanding between individuals. The entity's response was unexpected, a projection that conveyed not just comprehension, but something akin to longing. "I think it's lonely," Lena told Jax afterwards, her voice hushed with the weight of the realization. "It exists in a state beyond anything we can truly comprehend, but there's something in our chaotic, contradictory human emotions that resonates with it." Jax considered this. "So we're making friends with an incomprehensible cosmic horror because we're both weird in complementary ways?" That tracks for this crew. By the fourth day, Kalen announced that the engines were operational enough for a short FTL jump. "We can make it to the edge of the nebula, maybe a bit beyond. Not enough to get home, but enough to establish communications with passing ships." A strange mood settled over the crew as they prepared to depart. None of them had forgotten their original mission. The quantum crystals remained uncollected, the wreck of the stellar horizon unexplored. Yet they had discovered something far more valuable and improbable, a connection with an entity previously believed to be untouchable. As Kalen initiated the pre-jump sequence, the Kthar manifested on the bridge one final time. Its form had evolved from the chaotic distortion of their first encounter to something more defined. Still not solid, still not entirely comprehensible to human senses, but possessing a distinct presence that conveyed a kind of identity. Lena stepped forward, projecting a complex emotional sequence. They had developed to express gratitude and farewell. The entity responded with a projection of its own, one that needed no translation. It would not remain behind. As the engines hummed to life, the Kthar's energy form shifted, flowing into the ship's systems like water, finding countless tiny channels. Not violently or disruptively as it had during their first encounter, but with precision and purpose. "It's integrating with our systems," Kalen reported, monitoring the process with amazement rather than alarm. "Not hijacking them, enhancing them. The quantum efficiency is off the charts. Are we still in control of the ship?" Jax asked, his hand hovering over the emergency shutdown. Kalen nodded. "More than ever. It's working with us, not against us. It wants to leave the nebula," Lena realized. "It's choosing to come with us." Grunt, who had remained characteristically silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. "Everyone needs a crew." The jump engines initiated with a surge of power far beyond their design capacity. The Vagabond shot forward, reality warping around it not due to damage or attack, but because the Kthar was actively smoothing their passage through space-time, creating a perfect quantum envelope around the vessel. From his observation station, Dr. Thorne watched in stunned disbelief as the human vessel emerged from the nebula, trailing streamers of exotic energy. His instruments registered power signatures that should have been impossible for a ship of that size and class. More incredibly, the Kthar energy pattern was clearly detectable within the ship's systems, yet the vessel remained intact and under apparent control. With trembling limbs, Thorne composed the most important report of his long career. He included every scrap of data, every reading, every observation, knowing full well that his findings would be met with skepticism bordering on ridicule. The notion that humans, impulsive, emotional, chaotic humans, had succeeded where ancient, advanced species had failed was nearly impossible to accept. Yet the evidence was irrefutable. The Kthar, believed to be force of pure chaos and destruction, had willingly bonded with a human vessel. Not as a captive, not as a controller, but as something unprecedented in galactic history, a partner. When the Vagabond finally limped into a commercial shipping lane and was recovered by a passing freighter, the story spread across galactic communication channels with the speed of quantum entanglement. Initial reports were dismissed as sensationalism or outright fabrication. The crew was subjected to rigorous medical and psychological evaluation, suspected of suffering from nebula-induced delusions. But the presence of the Kthar could not be denied. It manifested selectively, cautiously, but undeniably for the team of xenobiologists who had been dispatched to investigate. Scientific instruments confirmed what human intuition had already discovered. The entity was not hostile, merely incomprehensible to conventional modes of thought. In the following months, the Galactic Concordat convened special sessions to address the implications. Species that had long regarded humans as primitive, emotional, and dangerously unpredictable were forced to reconsider their assessment. The very qualities they had dismissed as evolutionary weaknesses, adaptability, emotional complexity, intuitive rather than logical responses to crisis, had proven to be uniquely suited for contact with the Kthar. The humans, in their glorious irrationality, had accomplished what no other species could. They had formed a bond with chaos itself. The Vagabond and its crew, once anonymous salvagers operating on the fringes of civilized space, became reluctant celebrities. Offers poured in from research institutions, military organizations, and corporate entities, all eager to study the human-Kthar symbiosis. Jax declined them all. "We're not lab rats, and neither is our new crew member," he declared in what became a famously brief press conference. "We'll continue doing what we do best, finding valuable things that others have lost or abandoned." With their ship repaired and enhanced beyond any standard specifications, thanks in no small part to their resident cosmic entity, the crew of the Vagabond returned to the stars. Rumors of their exploits spread throughout the galaxy. Impossible rescues from spatial anomalies, salvage operations in regions of space previously deemed too dangerous to approach, discoveries that defied conventional science. And throughout it all, the Kthar remained with them, not as a tamed creature, but as an equal participant in their continuing journey. The entity that had evolved in the chaotic heart of the nebula found kindred spirits in these strange biological beings with their contradictory emotions and unpredictable behaviors. In the official archives of the Galactic Concordat, the incident was classified as First Contact Protocol, Exceptional Case Study. In the unofficial discussions of xenobiologists like Dr. Thorne, it was described more accurately. Proof that in a universe of infinite diversity, sometimes it takes one kind of madness to understand another. Humans, with their beautiful irrationality and resilient minds, had proven themselves to be the only species insane enough to tame the untamable, not through force or logic, but through the simple, chaotic act of being unrelenting with themselves.